Hello, everyone. This is Nayiri from Low Carbon Fasting. So, our guest today, I'm going to start with a smile. I think she's got to be one of the world's smiliest, most positive health coaches that I certainly have come across. So, she's a health coach. She's also a life coach. She's a nutritionist, certified personal trainer. She's an author, a TEDx speaker. She's a podcaster. She's founder of the Low Carb Lifestyle Hub. And on top of it all, she's a mom of five. She's a wife and a mom of five. From Melbourne, Australia, Tracey McBeath. Welcome to Low Carbon Fasting.
Oh, wow. I'm so thrilled to be here. You've been incredible in the space, and the interviews that you've done with people, I feel truly honored that you've invited me to be a part of this. And, hopefully we can have a conversation that helps people with their own health journeys and really stepping into changing the things that they want to change, and two health coaches having a conversation. I think that's pretty cool.
It's going to be fun, and we have so much in common, and I think we share similar insights, Tracey, and I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts. We share similar approaches to helping people. So I'm sure people, at least my followers, will benefit and learn from this discussion too. Tracey, you call yourself the health and healing coach. Okay, so we know what health is, most of us at least.
Most of us?
What are we healing from though? What are we healing from?
Well, that's interesting, because I think when we hear the word healing, a lot of us automatically think that, we've got to fix something, that we're broken. And I think, the essence of what I see healing is really about misunderstandings. So a lot of us have to heal from a lot of misunderstandings about how we operate as a human being, our place in the world. And yes, healing for a lot of us is metabolic, because unfortunately, as we know, we mostly have been told and fed the wrong information, literally fed the wrong stuff as well, which has made us sick. And that was me 10 years ago, which is why I am where I am today. And very grateful, because if I hadn't had that diagnosis, my life trajectory would have been totally different. I know it. So healing from, yes, poor metabolic health, just from misinformation and misunderstanding. And I think it's seeing that most of what we're healing from is just the fact that we think it's our fault when it really isn't. We're always doing the best we can. We always do. I truly believe that. It may not be the right thing for us long term. It may not be what we want to be doing, but in every day, in every moment of the day, we're doing the best we can with the level of insight and awareness that we have. And I think healing to me is seeing that that is infinite, and whatever we're seeing now is not all there is to see. And my job is to show my clients how to step into the space to see more, to free themselves from their habits and beliefs and all the things they thought to be true around who they are. And of course, diet is one part of that, but it is literally only one part of it. And most of the work I do is about the mind. And when we understand that, the what to eat, the when to exercise, the when to sleep, the how to look after ourselves, because we're coming from a place of love and kindness, becomes a lot easier.
Tracy, would you like to share your personal story with our audience? Because you also came from a space where you thought of yourself as broken. You found yourself repeating behaviors that you weren't proud of, and you couldn't see a way out. So you thought you were broken, as you put it. So what happened? What changed your insights? And I'm going to use the word insight quite a lot throughout this episode, because it's one of Tracey's favorite words. So share your personal story, please.
Oh gosh. Okay. So really, I suppose the transformation occurred in the last 10 years. So I was 50 this year in San Diego when I met you for the first time, which was wonderful. What a birthday. But 10 years prior to that, my life was very different. I still was married to the same man. I had 4 children at that stage. You know, I was still me. Nothing had changed to what it is now. But, you know, I've had massive changes and from inside, so changed from within. So really, yeah, I was a personal trainer. I was probably 18 kilos heavier than I am now. I'm not a very good personal trainer, but I couldn't figure it out. I was doing everything that I thought I was supposed to be doing. I did drink too much, and I did rely on you know, sugary ice cream and chocolate to sort of, I guess, fulfill my emotional needs and to try and make myself feel better. Knowing I didn't, you know, I didn't really have a choice. It felt very much like there was no other option. And then at 40, so I had the diagnosis of prediabetes and fatty liver. And I was very lucky to come across one of the very early doctors in the low carb space. In Australia, we have a very, you know, large low carb community, particularly in Melbourne. And I was just very fortunate to find someone who really helped me with my misunderstanding. See, it wasn't my fault that I couldn't lose weight. It wasn't my fault that I kept yo-yo dieting. I was just eating the things that were metabolically damaging my body and my brain. And, you know, that constant hunger all the time. All I could do is think about the next meal and, you know, the blood sugar. I know your listeners have all experienced. We all experience it until we don't, and we change what we eat. So I did that. And over the space of a couple of years, I actually did reverse the prediabetes, and the fat was gone in my liver. But I couldn't, the addictive alcohol and my reliance on sugar, I hate to use the word addiction because for me personally, it's a label that sometimes blocks us from seeing the things we need to see around it. So I have grown up in a family with an addiction from my grandparents to my brother. And, you know, I guess I inherited a lot of different behaviors around coping with life just purely because that's what I saw. And that's what the best I did at the time to, as I said at the start, to make myself feel better. So human beings are always driven to feel better in the moment. We don't like emotional suffering and torment, stress, however you want to label it. We don't like that feeling, and we will do innately anything we can to feel better, even if that continues to damage us. So I couldn't quite understand it. So I would go all day eating low carb quite well, you know, managing all of that. And then by 5 o'clock, my world fell apart because in my mind, 5 o'clock was when I was okay for me to drink. And I had I had my last child at 41, and I did manage. Of course, I managed not to drink while I was pregnant, but funny, as soon as I had the children, it would, yeah. And of course, my excuse was, well, you know, look, I've got all these kids, and we know how, you know, much hard work it is to have young children. And I would just watch the clock waiting for 5 o'clock. And that was okay for me to then have a drink. And, you know, it was my husband worked evenings, so he was around in the morning, but he was, you know, I was on my own with 5 kids you know, it was pretty rough in my own mind. And it was the only thing I saw to do. I could cope, you know, I couldn't cope without doing that. But of course that then led to, you know, the ice cream and the chocolate after that. And then I would wake up every morning feeling very ashamed and knowing what I knew, but not being able to stop it. You know, those quiet moments when the kids would wake you up early in the morning and, you know, I felt crap. I felt hungover. I felt ridiculously ashamed at what I knew that I couldn't stop doing. And I would get up into my day, and of course I'd have those, okay, this is it. Today I'm going to do it. This is it. I'm stopping it, you know, willpower, whatever. But it just never could, you know, because I know now, but I didn't know then, but I know willpower is not the answer to changing these habits and these behaviors. And so it was probably when I got to 43, I stopped personal training, and I realized I had to help people or share people the knowledge around diet. And, you know, I got sort of qualified as a health coach, kind of in my own mind, just kind of put my own issue over here that, you know, I can still do stuff. I can still learn. I can still coach, and I'll just deal with that later. very, very dishonest with myself. And as we know, often we are. We lie to ourselves a lot. Again, it's a misunderstanding. It's innocent, but we do it because we don't like the suffering and we don't like to admit that, you know, we don't know what we're doing. But then I did start coaching, and, you know, every person that I was lucky enough to sit in front of had this very similar issue to me on some degree. You know, it didn't look the same, but it was very much, I have these habits, particularly around either drinking or sugar, processed foods, and I just don't know how to stop it. And, you know, I realized, okay, there's a big part of the puzzle I'm missing here. So I had to go find it. And I did. And the start of the journey for finding that for me was I read a book called Brain Over Binge. I can't think of the name of the author now off the top of my head, but basically from that book, I learned that I was simply acting from a thought, that it had nothing to do with me. I wasn't broken, that my thoughts were not me, that I was experiencing simply a brain that had built a habit around coping. I didn't die, even though it was killing me slowly in the long term, but I didn't die. So the brain then says, right, you can keep doing it. And as we know, particularly with sugar, it's called the gateway drug because we are given it at a very young age. And I know for me that, you know, it was a part of feeling, it was always emotional. If I was sad, if I was hurt, if I was upset, that was the answer. It was never about acknowledging my emotions and managing them. It was always about getting rid of them through sugar. So, and I know that isn't that not most of people in the world, that, you know, sugar is so much a part, and it's such an okay part of life. It's part of every celebration. It's part of everything we do. We adore sugar. And then, of course, because it is so addictive and we get that instant hit that lasts such a short time, it becomes the way to handle life. And every time we're experiencing suffering we don't like, we look, you know, for that. So I've learned, oh my gosh, I didn't stop learning. I then, you know, for me, then that was the start, and it opened the doors, I suppose, to some more spiritual understanding about humanness, that I was able to see that I wasn't broken because my essence is love, like everybody's is. But since I've been here, you know, I've disconnected that with beliefs that were not love, you know, that I was not good enough, that I, you know, wasn't worthy, all these things that were in the way of who I really was. And, you know, so that was that's the long-term, I suppose, part of the journey, but it's a big part of my work now because I don't think I ever sit in front of anyone that doesn't feel they're worth it, that they don't, you know, we all sort of have these habitual beliefs that, you know, we are lacking in life and that we're not good enough. And purely that is because that is how our brain is wired. It's wired to be part of the tribe, to be, you know, to navigate life, make sure we're fitting in, make sure we're not going to be isolated, because if we were isolated, we would die. Now, in the modern world, it keeps us stuck, it keeps us trapped, and it keeps us from really seeing that who we are is everything we need. And all we have to do is unlayer all the beliefs and all the stories and all the conditioned behaviors that are in between us and that.
Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. I mean, everyone knows the expression that change comes from within, or change comes from inside. You, however, you have this marvelous quote on your website that says change happens from inside. Change happens from inside. So let's explain that.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing, really, because the insight is within.
Your vision. Inside as well.
Yes. Yes. It has to be. So, you know, we see the world through the lens and the filter of our own internal experience. And this is, you know, a huge part, again, of what I teach my clients, to understand that every human being on the planet has a unique vision, a filter, because of their own unique experiences and the way that their brain has navigated life for them and tried to keep them safe and, tried to make sure they're fitting in and all these things. And, that's unique to everybody. But when we don't understand that, we don't understand that the way we see the world is just simply our way of seeing the world. We think that everybody has this, everybody sees the world in the same way we do. Now, that in and of itself is a massive insight to have, because that opens us up and frees us up to be curious around, well, I talk about it like a window. So I've got my little window that I'm seeing the world, but so do you. And I'm really interested in how you see that, because if I can get curious about that, then we can build beautiful relationships and connections, and difference is actually valued instead of feared. So insight is the space that we create in our mind to see something new, but see what we have to do is let go of what we believe to allow that to happen. And when we don't understand how it all works, we fear that. We hold on to our beliefs like they're our safety net and our comfort. Now, they may not be working for us, but at least we know them and they're familiar, right? And they're comfortable. If we challenge that, it feels very, very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way to grow, the only way to evolve and to experience so much more in life than we're probably experiencing now is to get curious around that and to start to loosen our grip on everything that we believe.
Tracey, where does confidence come in this picture?
Ooh, confidence. Yes,
Important,
confidence
right?
is, well, confidence, I put it in the same bucket as you, if you like, with motivation or just security. I think, again, it's a misunderstanding that we don't have it. So we all have it. And we just innocently get tied up in the fact that our brain is designed to keep us safe all the time. And, insecure thought and self-doubt, all that is part of everyone's experience. So I love it with my group, because I sit there going, so who thinks they're not good enough sometimes? Who compares themselves to others sometimes? Me. So let's look at what is universal, because what we tend to do is think, oh, it's just me. It's my experience. I'm the only one that does that. And I try and hide and try and look and try and compare my worth with what others are doing, instead of saying, hey, well, of course my brain's going to do that because that's how it works. But everybody's brain does that. And the opposite of confidence is actually self-conscious. So our brains are always about me, right? Our brains they're one-eyed. That's the way I explain it. So my brain's there to protect me, and it's always going to be me focused. So when I do something for the first time, or when I do something that it perceives that I don't. So for example, public speaking. Most people are terrified of public speaking. And the reason they're terrified of public speaking is because they're totally focused on themselves. And the brain is saying, what if people don't like what you say? What if people laugh at you? What if you fall over? What if you make a mistake? What if you embarrass yourself? Well, those things are always going to be there, and they're still there for me. I just don't pay attention to them anymore. And where my attention goes is to the fact that I believe in my message. I truly live what I teach. I never, ever teach anything I haven't lived and I don't know. And I know that it can help people who are ready to hear it. Mm-hmm. So whenever I speak in public or do anything that most people find really, scary, all I do is think about them, and I'm there and I'm connected. And that to me is confidence. But that also comes with practice. See, we have a thing in our minds, I think particularly in the Western world, where it's like we want to do things straight away. We don't want to have to practice them. Well, if I'm doing a talk, like I did a TED talk this year, I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours practicing that. And the more you practice something, the more you know it, and the more you can actually be in the experience without focusing and worrying about, your own me mind. And it just happens as it is. And because the other thing is with that is that I know my worth is already here. It can't ever be taken away from me. So if I was to fall over on that stage or forget my lines or make a silly joke nobody laughed at, it would probably feel a little bit naked. I'd feel a little bit exposed, but my worth wouldn't be on the line. I wouldn't just roll over and think, oh, well, I'll never do that again. it becomes an experience that we can learn from, which is just so beautiful and rich. It's like you don't have to fear anything because everything is your teacher if you allow it to be your teacher.
It's interesting about confidence because, yeah, I agree with you. It's not, confidence isn't something that you either have or you don't. It's something that you build. Every little experience where you challenge yourself a little bit more, a little bit more, and yet again and again, you grow in confidence. So yeah, it's wonderful hearing it from you as well. Now, how important is the social circle? So what role does your immediate social circle play in who you are and your decisions? You kind of talk about social events. So they must play a role because you're part of society. But
Absolutely.
I also think that, you know, to a certain extent, we can choose what social circle we want to belong to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Look, it is important. I think it's very sad. I find it very sad when people don't, you know, when they fear social circles and they fear social circumstances. And a lot of that, again, comes down to a mind that is full of insecure thinking. People believe that's them, so they don't want to then step out into society and being social. But you know, that transference of energy when you are with people is very, very enriching. And I think there's much to see around that. So the way I saw that, particularly when I started to change. So this is a big part of the work we do as coaches, because we are going against the grain in a lot of what we end up doing. You know, changing our diet can open our mind to seeing that actually it's actually pretty uncomfortable in everybody to stand up for who you are and be different. We don't like that, again, because our mind isn't designed like that. We are designed to be tribes, part of the tribe. We're not designed to stand out. And that evolutionary trait would never have carried us to today because those people would have been killed. Like you just, you know, in tribal, you know, we have to understand we have a tribal brain in the modern world. This is how I love describing it like this, because it just makes it so easy to see that it's not anything wrong. It's just a misunderstanding. And with insight, you can change it. So social circles are really important. So obviously, you know, communities around like-minded people are just incredibly rich. But what I see with misunderstanding, what people do is they tend to avoid situations where they're going to be with people that see the world differently to them. So a lot of people, particularly if they decide they want to go low carb, for example, they've been invited to a function, or, oh, there's not going to be anything there I'm going to eat. There's going to be a lot of people there that do, you know, they might not go. They'll avoid those situations. Whereas, and I understand that because there would have been a time I would have done that too, but I think that's a misunderstanding. Because I think what we do is we step into, you know, maybe it's with diet first, but who knows why we do this, but we need to step into who we are and be confident with who we are. And we need to know who we are. Now, most of us don't actually know who we are because we've been told who we are and we've just believed that. So it's actually a beautiful unraveling process to learn who we are and to step up to the plate of, I'm okay. This is the choice I'm going to make. But you know what? You are free to make your choices too. I don't need you to make the same choices as me to validate who I am. That's my job. I've validated myself and I'll free you to be on your path. See, a lot of us, we get this information and, you know, the question I get a lot is, how do I get my husband and my kids or my family or everybody else to do it? And I'm like, well, you can't. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, well, you actually cannot change anybody other than you. And that's your first job. And actually, you freeing yourself to be you and stepping into situations, being confident as you and making your choices, you are going to gift that to other people as well. So the minute with humans, when living in that misunderstanding, that the minute you say to someone, this is how you have to do it, they will close down. They will stop listening to you and it'll affect the relationship, and you have no chance then of having any influence over them, as opposed to saying, well, you are free to do you. And see, when we come into situations, and like, for example, so I'm 95% carnivore, so I will eat meat. Now, we know what that is like for most people. That's very confronting. So I'm very compassionate and understanding when I'm with people that are making a different choice to me. I'm very okay with my choice, but I understand that it will be very confronting to them to see me making a different choice. And what their mind says is, oh, because you're doing that, you're saying I'm wrong. See, it's got enough. My choice has nothing to do with them. But what the mind does is try and, okay, where do I fit into that? Where do my choices fit into that? So it's really interesting. I think it's, you being you is the best gift you can give to anybody in your world. And I would say, don't fear situations that are not with like-minded tribal, the same people, because they are your teachers. Being with people that don't see the world as you do, just such a beautiful opportunity for you to see something new and for you to grow and to practice. Again, I come back to that practice. It takes practice to be in a world or be in a room where you are the only one making your choice and being okay with that.
Wow. It needs maturity, I think, emotional maturity maybe as well. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Well, I've got a little something, that I can share just around that, because I have the way I describe it is I talk about being in the weeds or being in the flow. So in life, we don't realize really that we don't have to be up in our head and up in our thinking all the time. And, this sort of, overthinking, thinking about me all the time, paying attention to everything our brain does tends to keep us out of the present moment, because there's always trying to navigate the past or the future. And, when we come from that place, we're actually emotionally unintelligent. We're actually not able to gain insight and to learn. We're very much about reactive. We're very much about being the victim. We're very much about, we're not very emotionally mature. We can't get insight from that place. So as a coach, like I know I can feel straight away where my client is when they start with me. And if they're in the weeds, we can't do any coaching. My job is to actually help them to step away from that and to get present to me and where we are. And then we can see something new. But see, most people don't really know that that's available to them. They just think their experience they're having is their experience, and there's no other choice other than that. And that's how I couldn't stop drinking and how I couldn't stop eating, because I didn't know I had another choice other than to the experience that I was having. And we have many, many choices, but we have to, allow ourselves to let go of our grips on the one that we're having.
I'm so much aligned with you in what you just explained there. It's okay to be you, to be different, and not necessarily look out for others to give you the confidence. I think the confidence needs to come from within, from your own experience and from the positive energy that your experience gives you. Obviously, let's talk about health, because that's my area. So as a type 1 diabetic, if what I'm doing isn't really helping my blood sugars, then I can't speak with confidence. I can't, just tell people, hey, this is working for me. So if it's not working, then, so it's my experience, right? So confidence, I think, if my experience is successful for me, is benefiting me, then I think my confidence will also grow. But I so agree with you, Tracey, that we need to stop being kind of dogmatic, because I see that quite a lot. You mentioned the carnivore world, but I see so much of that in type 1 diabetes management sort of circles as well. The minute, obviously, diet plays a massive role, right, in managing diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2. Diet is crucial. But the minute you tell someone their blood sugars are all over the place because they haven't made the same dietary choice as you have made, you've alienated them. Totally.
Correct.
Totally. Yep. You've made an enemy of them. It doesn't have to be like that. So there is a way of saying exactly the same thing. In my opinion, I'm so very careful never to be dogmatic. every time I put a tweet out or whatever it may be, or on Facebook, this is what I do. This is what has been working for me. I don't know about you. I'm not living your experience. Your experience
Yes.
has got to be experienced by you. You have to find out what works for you. But this is what I do, and it's working for me.
100%. I think in my job, it is, I'll say that, well, number one, I can't do it for you. Number two, I can't tell you what to do. My job is to show you why it's going the way that it is, and potentially why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, and offering you solutions and insights to help you then be the one to create your own path. And the way it's going to look for you is not going to be the way it's going to look for me. I did a workshop on Sunday in not far from where I live in Melbourne. And, I said to people, it was mostly about the mind. I did have a doctor come in and talk about metabolic health because, to me, they're both root causes. So understanding the mind is just like understanding your metabolic health. It's looking at root cause to understand why you're experiencing the experience you have, and then what can you do to influence that. I mean, most of my clients and the people in my world, they know that I'm carnivore because I went carnivore. So it was kind of like sugar-free, low-carb, keto, carnivore, because at about 45, 46, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And I'd already been looking into it. I had a few clients that were curious around it. And for me, that's why I made the decision to go, look, I'm pretty flexible. I'd say I'm 90, 95%. But the way it is for me is I choose what makes me feel good. And I'm in that place where I want my clients to be, that I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything. I choose to do the things that I want to do for me that make me feel the best and help me show up to my life in the best way I can. And that to me looks like mostly, animal foods. I feel the best when I eat those things. But I don't, I say I don't on social media, or, I rarely say this is what I eat, because you know what? When people don't understand their mind and how it works, they'll go, oh, right, well, I want to do that because then I'll get that result. You know how people say to you, tell me, what's the brand you use, or what's the this you use? It's the mind trying to figure out, well, if I have what she's having, I'm going to get that same result that she's got. And it does not work like that. And we will continue to try those things until we realize that that's just searching still outside of ourselves, that we have to do the work to find our own path and to have, our own experiences, to experience and understand why it is that we are experiencing it in the way that we are. And that is the work. That is what most people won't do, because it is hard. And it requires effort, and it requires consistently showing up for you, not for the rest of your life. Well, in some ways for the rest of your life, but the effort part of it changes over time for, once you start seeing the results and, the benefits of it, and then stepping into that ownership. So a lot of the work I do, I talk around it, are you an owner or a victim? And victim is a very negative word. And I would never, don't ever, so I'm not judging you. I'm just trying to help you understand, what are we innocently doing that is keeping us as a victim? And what are we doing as an owner? Now, an owner will always choose. They will never feel pressured to do anything. It is, I'm stepping into a place where I'm choosing to do this for me. I'm choosing to do this for you. And that's a very different place to, oh my gosh, I've got to do this, to have, all these things that we think we have to do in our days that just end up overwhelming us and exhausting us. It's a very different mindset to come from.
So I think, from what you're describing, where would you say, how would you fit change in? Because life changes constantly.
Yeah.
For me personally, not just life changes constantly. My diet also changes based on, I travel. I'm a frequent traveler. So a few months ago, I was in California. Before that, I was in the UK, and then I'll be back in the UK. And then I might actually go to Florida as well. So every time I'm going around, my blood sugars go all over the place. And then I need to create a new routine, a new sort of insulin doses to fit the climate and the different levels of stress. So for me personally, adapting to the change and embracing the change and taking quick action to actually almost anticipate something is going to go wrong with my blood sugars. I anticipate it. And that anticipation for me prepares me, at least emotionally and mentally, that, hey, the minute I land in, I don't know, Florida, different climate, different stress levels, different wake up time, maybe different time to go to sleep, a different routine, different foods, maybe slightly different exposure to different vegetables, maybe. So I'm going to have to change my insulin dosing. So that, because I know it's going to happen, I'm prepared and I'm not shocked by it. It almost doesn't bother me. So I talk to people and they're always bothered. Yesterday I had a bad day. Well, what? Why did you not anticipate? It's okay. First of all, it's okay to have a bad day. We're human.
We all do.
We all have bad days and bad blood sugar days. I know they're irritating. It can take a long time to fix it, but it's not the end of the world. And the more you prepare yourself mentally that, tomorrow's going to be a stressful day, maybe that's going to be reflected in my blood sugars, then maybe you can address it. So I don't know. What do you think about change?
Well, I think that the way that, you've spoken about that is a really freeing way to do it. I think, obviously with type 1, this is imperative that you get this right. I mean, there's not much room for leeway for you in terms of your dosing, right? Now, most people are, really fortunate enough not to have that level of detail needed, but we still suffer. And why we suffer is because we are constantly wanting things to look different to what they are. Now, that's the opposite of suffering, acceptance. Like if you have a choice, you can either accept your type 1 diabetes diagnosis and all the stuff that comes with it, or you don't. Now, if you don't accept it, you'll want everything to look different. And all you're going to do is create mental suffering. And you'll probably have, blood sugar skyrocketing all the time because of your cortisol, right? We know stress affects cortisol. Now, stress is an internal thing. Stress comes from our thinking. It comes from our thinking about how we're thinking about what's going on around us. It's not necessarily the outside circumstances. And don't get me wrong, people like when I say this first, they're like, oh, but this is bad, blah, 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 blah. So yes, things happen in life all the time. But the freedom that we have, and we understand that, is that we can show up and we can see it in any way that we want to see it. And I know when I'm suffering, it's because I'm not accepting how it is. When we accept how it is, we will deal with the reality as opposed to dealing with a mind that's trying to say it should look different to that. The exhaustion and the, what that does is just, it exhausts us at our mitochondrial level, but it stops us actually from seeing what we need to see to deal with the situation. That is not present moment. So your preparation, right, with your expectations that something might go wrong is smart, obviously, with what you've got. But the thing with human beings overall is things are never going to go the way that we want. And that's what we're up against, thinking that it should. Like we travel too. We're in Australia. We're coming to the UK actually in January. My husband's turning 60. So we're doing a little bit of a trip for him in the UK. And I love travel because how much it teaches my kids that they have to sit in some discomfort, right? That things don't go the way that we think they should go, that, that things run late, planes get delayed, luggage gets lost, people run to their own time. And, that happens all the time in life. And we can either be aware of that and accept that and deal with the reality, or we can continue to deal with our mind that's wanting it to be different to what it is. There's so much freedom in that. And our mitochondria just love it when we find acceptance because it's happy. We're not living then in a stress response. We're not pumping adrenaline and cortisol unnecessarily through our body. And it's just a little bit more peaceful. Why on earth do we think that things should go the way we think they should? That is just that consequence of that me mind that we have to step away from. And when we do that, we open up to, wow, it is how it is. And I get to see how, how I'm going to experience that. That is my superpower.
I guess even ancestrally, right? If you think about, our hunter-gatherer ancestors, no 2 days would have been exactly the same. So they would have had to go out hunting, right? It
Yeah,
would
but
have been
they
a completely different experience every single day. So
absolutely, and there was no comfort there, right? This is another thing, in the world today, we want comfort all the time, but comfort didn't exist for our ancestors. And they absolutely, so the ones that navigated or, felt, how we have this intuition. So there would have been ones they felt there was another tribe about to approach us, or there was an animal watching us. They procreated, they had more babies, they survived, as opposed to the ones that, were not aware of that at all. So it's interesting because I think, there's so many characteristics that are obviously a part of our mind today, but the modern world, it's like the tribe is no longer a small group of 20 people. It is on social media, thousands, millions of people that, we care about what they think, we compare ourselves to. It's like, we live in this constant unnecessary tribe of I'm never going to be good enough if I'm going to compare myself to the whole planet, right? But yeah, I don't know, I've kind of lost my train of thought there, but I think it's just there's such a misunderstanding of the mind that it just trips us up in so much of how we want to live our life today.
Yeah, building on that tribe talk. So it's kind of links in with the social circle that we were talking about earlier on. So yes, we are different from our ancestors because now we actually belong to many different tribes, real life, and then on social media. So we have like tribes, many, many different tribes that we belong to, which can be confusing. But the good thing about it is, or our experience now, is that we can choose. We have the freedom to choose what tribes we want to belong to.
Yeah.
So choose your tribe wisely. So I, for example, don't follow tribes where type 1 diabetics take unlimited amounts of insulin and eat processed and junk foods and think that's normal. I don't want to belong to that tribe because I have the choice. I have nothing in common with the people in that tribe. I do things differently. And if I happen to be among that tribe, I'm extremely respectful of everyone's choice. But on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to be part of that tribe. Because
I love that.
I want to be part of a tribe where I can learn from people who have similar experiences. So.
Yes. And I think that that's in, you've had that awareness and that insight, which a lot of people don't have because they don't know who they are to begin with. And they fear that there's a lot of, I suppose, insecure thinking around not knowing. I don't know who I want to belong to, and I should belong to that, and I should listen to that. And I think that is purely a reflection of just a lack of self, a lack of knowing who they are. So that's part of the journey that I take my clients on, because once you know that, you won't fear making those choices. In fact, it's really easy. I have had many people in my life since I've changed that haven't accepted me as who I am now, and I'm okay with that. I release them with love, and I don't expect them to change if they don't accept me, but I'm not going to change any longer when I spent most of my life trying to change to make sure I was the people pleaser and everyone loved me. I've freed myself from now. So I am who I am. I come from love. I operate from love. I give love, but I do not change who I am to make somebody else feel better. I'm not responsible for how other people think. See, there's so much in this that, most of us have. When do people think about this stuff? Like, it's really, really important. It's all part of this journey of healing. So that's coming back to the healing part. It's healing from misunderstandings.
Tracy, you are trained in what you called the acceptance and commitment therapy. What is it? It's the first time I heard about it, but I thought it would fit in, here at this in our discussion.
I did a course, and it's called ACT. There'll be a lot of people probably listening to it that have heard. It's a type of psychology that, so I'm not a therapist, and, obviously coaches aren't therapists, but, I don't think you need to be a therapist to do the work that we do, because we're about showing, we're never about telling, we're about showing people. And it really, the most of the work that I do is before psychology. So I take people right back to what is innate within all of us and what's in the way of that, which is the same for everyone. It's just different content and different experience that's created the content. But that universal nature of the human experience is what I talk to. Now, with ACT, I found ACT really, really helpful because it also talks to a similar concept. So I can't actually remember the guy that is really quite well known for his work in it, but it talks about the illusion of happiness, that it is a trap, that happiness actually is something that we have to choose because of the default setting of the human mind, which is constantly looking for threats, constantly looking for comparisons, and if we sit in that all the time, well, what's happiness? Oh my God, we never feel it. We don't feel it at all. So understanding that helps us then to choose that we can be happy if we choose to be happy. Now, what's happy is what people think happiness is not happiness. Happiness to me is just a peace of mind, right? And knowing what I'm responsible for and what I'm not, and releasing all the stuff that I'm not responsible for. So that's where ACT came in. So there were some things in ACT that I really, really thought fitted really nicely with the work I was doing, just around, I suppose little tools. I don't use a lot of tools, but just little tools to help people get insight, to see what they need to see. And it is that whole acceptance and commitment. That therapy is about accepting your thinking, accepting your mind, accepting things the way they are, but still choosing differently. So we don't have to change it. It's not cognitive behavioral therapy, which gets in there and we got to change our thoughts. Geez, that's exhausting. I mean, this is just so much more easy and freer to just see, well, of course, my mind says that, and I've been paying attention to that. But I know that I'm not my thinking. My thinking isn't me. I know my essence, and I know I have a choice as to whether I pay attention to that or not. And that's, so it's just it was just something that beautifully aligned with how I was teaching anyway.
Yeah, everything you talked about, everything just links together. It's part of
does.
the whole sort of growth, human growth, I would think. So I think we left a couple of things out. So you talk about the importance of understanding the mind, the body obviously, now understanding your body, understanding your health conditions and what you can do about them. Maybe you talk about insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, etc., and reversal of diabetes. Understanding the mind, we kind of covered that. Now, understanding the nervous system.
Yeah, I love that.
Why do we need to understand our nervous system, and how do we do it?
Oh, wow. It's a big one that I spend quite a bit of time on with my clients and in my groups. But again, it's understanding that we have a parasympathetic and a sympathetic nervous system. And, we generally, I take it back to that most people think they're choosing everything they do in their day, but they're not. So 95% of what we do in our days from our subconscious mind. So that's really, again, part of our mind trying to help us do things easy, get through life and navigate life. Perfect for cleaning your teeth. Perfect for saying, that the thing with the 4 legs in the lounge room is a chair. I mean, imagine having to relearn everything that we know every day, like impossible. So we have to really appreciate that and love that and be thankful for that. However, when it comes to perhaps what, trauma is something that everybody has, because trauma is never the event that we've had. It's our thinking around that. And a lot of us tend to carry trauma with us into our adulthood. Now, I don't deal with people's traumas per se, but I show them how it will still play out in their in their daily life as an adult through understanding the nervous system. So when we have a trigger, and we have a nervous system response, it's almost as automatic as breathing. So the easiest way I describe it is, for me, I get a nervous system response to loud noise. And, who knows why? It was probably something that, from obviously I've carried as a fear in my childhood. And I have 5 kids, 4 boys. There's always a lot of noise. I had to kind of, come to terms with this, because I would actually get really reactive when there was some loud noise. It would trigger a fear response, a stress response in me, automatic, right? Wow. Just a part, part of that nervous system. And then I would react. So what I did learn is understanding, well, it's automatic. So we will experience it, but with our conscious mind, we can now teach ourselves that we're safe. So when we notice our stress response, which will be kind of different for everyone, with my clients, I give them something like a traffic light system, and I'll say, okay, so when we're green, we're kind of in the flow, we're in the present, we're feeling good. We know that feeling, we can relate to it. We're breathing normally, we're not heightened. But when we start to go up, so something might happen. I use the example, it makes people laugh. It's like, we pull out a load of washing with a tissue in it, or someone cuts us off in traffic, or our kids drop a glass of milk, or, our husband, we walk into the house and the house is a mess and there's noise everywhere and no one's done the dishes. It'll be different for everybody, but they're very common ones that we can relate to. Now, that usually will set off a stress response, which is no different to feeling that we are about to be eaten by a bear. That is the same response in our body. It is priming us to fight, flight, or freeze. So we have, but we rarely do that. So then we react to that. And it's usually from, it's not emotionally intelligent. We yell, we scream, we jump up and down, we have our tantrums, whatever we do. Now, that's where the understanding the nervous system comes in. It's a beautiful protective mechanism, but it is only designed to happen in short bursts, rarely, maybe once every few days. And what happens is it will go through the system, the signal will go through. But when we then latch onto it with our mind and we overthink it and we overplay it and we think there's something wrong and our life is crap and how are we going to change it? What are we going to do? All this stuff that we then fixate on, it just keeps it going round and around and around. And eventually then we're walking around with a heightened stress response. That is our normal. That becomes our normal for so many people. And then, of course, that leads to things like it did for me, which was Hashimoto's, autoimmune, chronic fatigue, all these things that are, I believe, directly linked, yes, to our diet, but also to our misunderstanding of that nervous system and stress response. So we need to heal that. So it's not about healing the traumas. It's about, I look in the present moment. I work in the present moment, right? So I get people to become really aware of what's playing out. What are they? You got to notice your reactions, notice these feelings, but you're not powerless to them anymore. We're going to retrain them. We're going to check you as the adult are going to reassure your body that you're actually safe. If your husband doesn't do the dishes, it's not going to kill you. If they leave, your kids drop a glass of milk or there's a tissue in the washing, it's annoying, but it's not your life isn't in danger. But that's what you're doing to your body, and it's innocent. Again, right? We don't understand it. But when we do start to, oh my gosh, we can free ourselves from that so much just through understanding. But that's the work we have to do ourselves, because I can't be there beside you while you're having these experiences. I can only show you how it might look and help you have the courage to look at it and become aware of it, and then to retrain and to do all that yourself. But it's so important. I mean, we know what stress does. Misunderstood stress. Good stress is really, we can totally, that change the way we see that. And that can really be empowering and give us a huge amount of energy. But I'm talking about this chronic day-to-day stress that so many of us are living in without any awareness that we're living in it.
And it doesn't have to be like that. Not every situation, not every difference in opinion, in outlook needs to.
No, but see, that's the understanding. That's what we will do if we don't. And I did that. this is why, I understand this so much, because I mean, I was like I was asleep. And all this stuff just helped to open my eyes to, where my experience of life was coming from. And, that's what the healing is. That's the understanding. And it isn't something that, we think we are powerless to everything that we experience in every day, that, life is just being thrown at us and we're powerless to how we manage it. But we're not. We have so much individual power to deal with things. We just have to understand we do and know what's available.
Talking of stress, I think part of it can be avoided. I'll give you this example because I was coaching one of my clients, and she's wearing the CGM, and I could see that over 3 days her blood sugars were like abnormal, just running high, and she's only pre-diabetic. But she's running those 3 days, she's running in diabetic levels, right?
Wow.
And I couldn't understand what was happening. Couldn't be food, because I couldn't see the blood sugars rising, postprandial rise. I couldn't see that. It's just consistently high. I thought, okay, she's either not slept well, or she's going through something in her life, because she was doing so well. So when I was talking to her, I was almost prepared, and to hear something going wrong at home, or with work, and she's a professional, so maybe she's made redundant or something like that. So these are kind of stresses, and I can understand, and you can't really always avoid. But you know what she said to me? Those 3 days, I was watching hours and hours after work, hours and hours of television. And a certain situation, which I don't want to get into now. So something obviously drastically going wrong in one part of the world. And she was just exposing herself to that. And she said, it started making me so sad and upset and angry. I said to her, you had the choice to switch the television off. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that you're protecting yourself from being constantly exposed to that bear that could attack you anytime. It's like, who would put themselves in that? I wouldn't put myself in that situation where I'm jumping in front of the bear, constantly, exposing myself to danger. If I can protect myself, if I can just shut my door and remain inside while the bear is outside, I would do that. I would choose to do that.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
What would you do? Then this stuck with me, because it was a few months, maybe 6 months ago. So it stuck with me. And I'm thinking, for some stresses, we do have the choice. In fact,
absolutely.
I look at myself, I don't want to constantly hear about crime going on in downtown, wherever. And I don't want, it doesn't mean I'm not aware of it. Doesn't mean I'm not, aware of what's going on in the world. But I just don't want to hear it constantly, because it's triggering for me. Yeah. And it's going to be reflected in my blood sugars, actually. It's going to dampen my mood. And it's just, I don't want it. But
well, there's a lot in that. And I think for me personally, a lot of people saw that during COVID. I'm in Melbourne. We were in one of the most locked down cities in Melbourne. And, one of the things I understand with what people need to understand too is that the news is not about information. It's about selling, and fear fuels an economy. So they are designed to create fear, and they will always present the news in a fearful way. Now, we as the consumer need to be critical thinkers. So I haven't watched the news for years, and I get the response sometimes, well, how are you going to know what's happening? I said, well, because I tend to hear what I need to hear. If there was something I needed to know, I will hear it, and it hasn't let me down yet. And, and people are like, oh, but don't you want to know what's going on in the world? I said, well, what can I do about that? Apart from, if I watch stuff like that is designed to make me fearful, all it's going to do is affect me negatively. Now, when I'm negative, how does that affect the people that are actually ultimately around me? Not very good. And it makes my health poor. The world needs people who are not living in fear. They need people who are connected to love and who are vibrant and healthy and have the energy to show up to life from love. That's what the world needs. Now, if I sit there and watch the news, I am not going to be in that place. Now, I'm not powerless to that either. So there is a lot of, empowerment I can have around choosing what I want to focus on if I'm watching the news. But they understand how the mind works. And, like it's putting, we are putting stuff into our brain that we then have to consciously go, well, is that true? Is that not? Is that something I need to focus on or not? And I think at the end of the day, just understanding that, everything in the world is about fueling an economy. I talk to this about with my kids. I've got my oldest is 22. They've grown up, not so much him, but my other ones, obviously with social media, on phones all the time, so different to what it was like when we grew up. But, I will talk to them about this understanding of we can't change that, but you have to understand that your addiction to that is what's going to make them money. So everything they do is about keeping you on it. You have to be a critical thinker and be aware of that and make that choice, because this is what we don't understand. Exactly as you said, you can make a choice, but we don't see when we're in it that we have access to that choice. So we have to, I guess that's part of the insight. We have to understand how it works. We have to allow ourselves the curiosity and the space to create that awareness that we do have choice, because at most, when we're in it, we don't see it. It's only when we're out and we do the work. And then, of course, we allow the experience to happen again. And then we say, okay, now I'm going to be in a position where I feel like I can make a choice. But I think it's a trap for everybody, and the dopamine. I mean, that's another part. There's so many connected things that, at the end of the day, we have to be in a position where we can choose what works for us and what doesn't, and know that everyone wants to make a bit of money. I mean, the generation of my kids, I don't feel sorry for them. They're on their path, and they have the opportunity to learn as well and to see things. But, they are little pawns that a lot of people just want to make money out of. And I think if the more we can see that, the more choice we're going to have. But see how that plays out. Like this is what people have to understand, particularly in the low carb space. It is not just about the diet. Look what stress does to our blood sugar, and CGMs have been an incredible resource to show people that. And I think we do have to step back and look at it holistically. And that's why I think, for me, it's like, yeah, I do talk about diet, but I talk about all this other stuff first, because if we have all this understanding, then, the diet stuff tends to, but, it's neck and neck. It's hard. It's not one or the other. They have to come together.
I love it that you talk about thriving, right? And you can thrive if you understand your nervous system, your mind, your body. And so that's where the healing is. So health and healing coach. It's been a wonderful discussion, Tracey. I'm going to finish off with a quote on your website about change, actually. But before I do that, now I will put all your links in the description below, but I would like you to tell our audience about your book, and I'll put the book link as well so people can buy that and support Tracey.
What, these? I just happen to have them right here.
Yes. Okay, so
that was my first one.
Just came out a few weeks ago.
It did. So just a quick summary with the books. So this one I wrote during lockdown. This one is it's just done so well selling on Amazon. This is your entry into understanding. So I wrote the book because I wanted
title, Tracey, sorry.
The title is You Have Today. I know my blurry, sorry. 100 Insights That Will Change Your Life. So I never intended to write a book. So we went into number 6 lockdown, and I could just see so many people suffering, and I wanted to help people understand it. So I said on my Instagram, I'm going to show up every day for a year and just share an insight. And I got to day 100 and I'm like, I've got a book. Oh my goodness, this is a book. So I took it off and I said, I'm going to put together, anyway. So I did that and put it together as a book. And there was a lot of insecure thinking I had to step over around that, right? Because I'm not a writer, but I'm a sharer of what's true. And I had to get over myself that, I didn't write like a classical writer. I just shared from the heart, and it's had incredible feedback. And so that's your entry. And then the second one I wrote with my group. So I have a long-term group called The Art of Thriving. People will join and they can stay as long as they like, but it's essentially a 6-month group. And during this year, at the start of the year, I said to them, right, I'm going to show up every morning to show you how to show up for you. And every morning I'm going to share with you an insight to help you see something in your day, because we have to make a commitment to ourselves and we have to practice showing up for ourselves. So that book is more around, that's what I did. So I did that for 6 months. And then I said, right, I'm going to put that together as a book too. But that's more about how to do the work. So that's going to have a lot more tools, a lot more pointing to you to something that you can see in your life. Whereas this is much more around the entry into how we see things the way we do. It's understanding thought systems, the stuff we've talked about, that the way I see the world is the way I see the world. And my mind's always going to try and convince me that that's right and everybody else is wrong. The world has to evolve beyond that if we're going to find peace and if we're going to accept people for who they are. I'm not trying to say it's going to solve everything, but it has changed the people's lives that start to understand it, because I show up differently then to my husband, to my kids, to the people I buy my coffee from. I don't react to people who are suffering. I don't take it personally. And I allow people to be who they are. And but then I choose who I want to have in my world and who I don't. And that is just incredible freedom.
That's wonderful. That's it. I will put the links below so people can
thank you
and support Tracey's efforts. Now, I love this quote on your website. It's actually by Rumi, the Persian poet. Okay, so yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. What a beautiful quote, right? It's just so perfect for what you stand for your mission. Tracey McBeath, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated it, and keep on spreading the message of positivity. Keep on smiling, and I have so much respect for what you do. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, darling. I can't believe we've talked for as long as we have. It's been such a pleasure. And the same for you. I've been in your seat doing the podcasts, and I know it's hard work, but it's so enriching too. And your message is so, so important. I can't thank you enough for inviting me, and you keep smiling. Look at your beautiful smile. You and I together, we
both smile. We have to bring in Tia Reid here as well.
I know. The three of us.
The three of us. We have photos with the three of us together and with big smiles from the conference. I think I've shared it with you, but
yeah. Oh, we should look at. I've got to look at it again now when I hop off.
I'll email it to you. That's all from us, everyone. Thank you for watching. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.